Good evening and welcome to the June 6th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We'll be calling this meeting to order, and we'll also please ask the public to silence their cell phones. I'll introduce the board at this time, starting on my far right. Your far left is James Morse, who is an associate member of the board, followed by Jerry Patamas, who is a full voting member. Ken Foreman is here, who is our vice chairman. My name is T.J. Hurry. I am the chairman of the board. To my left is Ed Van Kuren, who is a full voting member, followed by Bob Dugan, who is a full voting member as well, and Mary Berry, who is an associate member. Also with us tonight is Noreen Stockman. She had to run upstairs and see if we had any batteries in the office, but she'll be back down shortly. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the zoning bylaws for the town and considers requests on special permits, variances, and appeals as provided by the bylaws which have been approved by town meeting and the Attorney General's office for the Commonwealth. All decisions are made through the public hearing process. The board's goal is to hear testimony from the applicant and the public, and also to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read a public announcement of the hearing and then present any pertinent information from the files, such as referrals from town departments and correspondences to and from the board. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation, and then time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then question the applicant, and then the public will be invited to they will be invited to comment. Public comments should be directed only at the project, and we also ask that you please refrain from making any personal or derogatory statements, but such comments could include an opinion in favor or in opposition, or it just might simply be a question about the nature of the project. The chair will limit discussion in the interest of time if comments become repetitive. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair and should come to the podium to the right here. And we also ask that you please state your name and address for the record. The board then may either close or continue the hearing. When the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented by testimony and in the file to make a decision by motion and vote of the board, the hearing will then be closed. And the alternative, we may continue the hearing to a future date and time certain. After the hearing is closed, no more testimony may be taken. As for any board discussion and decision, the board then may further discuss the project among ourselves, and a motion to deny or approve will be made and voted upon. Motion will include a summary of key findings and conditions. An affirmative vote of 4 members, which is a supermajority, is required for approvals of motions on special permits, variances, and appeals. A split vote, such as a 3-2 vote, would be a failure to carry and would result in denial of the project. Under Massachusetts general law, if a special permit is denied, the applicant cannot return to the board for 2 years unless the project is substantially different. And turning to the agenda for tonight, we have 3 new hearings as well as a number of open meeting items.
So motion to take the open meeting administrative approvals out of order. 2, 3, and 4, Valley 415 Shorewood Drive, Manise 14 Knollwood Drive, and Village at Old Main LLC, 41 Old Main Road, in that order.
Okay, so that was a motion by Bob, and I think I heard a second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so, open meeting agenda item 2, it's the administrative approval for 3119 Valley, 415 Sherwood Drive in East Falmouth. Is anyone here tonight for that?
Good evening, my name is Joe Valley, and I'm here on behalf of 415 Sherwood Drive, and our application is to install a 12 by 16 shed. It will be 50 feet from the road, but it will be in a position which is in front of the prime property, prime house.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the applicant?
No questions?
No. No question.
Okay, seeing none, how would the board like to proceed?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Move to approve by Bob and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, up next, we have application 33-19, Moniz, 14 Knollwood Drive in East Falmouth. Is anyone here for the applicant?
Yeah,
Good afternoon, evening, I guess. Mark Moniz, I'm the homeowner.
So you're asking to convert the existing breezeway to habitable space?
Yes. It was, from the project's conception, it was supposed to be a mudroom. We got into the project years ago, and the architect didn't put walls, so it remained a breezeway for years. We put the walls up, and we'd just like to have the mudroom in a heated space.
Any questions for the applicant?
Will this be a bedroom by chance, or just habitable?
No, it's a 8x9 space between my living room and garage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just what's non-conforming? Why are you,
I'm not really sure, other than the original house is too close to the frontage of the road, but the garage
well,
and
that's probably it then.
the garage and breezeway, which were added after the fact, met the minimum setbacks.
Any other questions from the board?
I guess, does this result in any change in lot coverage? Probably not, no. Okay.
It's-
Motion to approve, there's no other questions?
Move to approve by Jerry, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ed, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right, we have a request for board administrative approval, application 95-15, Village at Old Main, LLC, 41 Old Main Road in North Falmouth.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Michael Borselli, representing the applicant, along with Sean Skihill, the developer and applicant is in the audience. He will be speaking to one of the elements we're asking for administrative approval for. If you recall, this is a comprehensive permit for an affordable housing project at 41 Old Main Road. In the initial project application documents, there was a conceptual landscape plan that was approved. The developer has actually further developed it into a construction drawing, a more comprehensive, detailed landscape plan that we were here tonight to get your administrative approval of. And I have the landscape plan on the screen. And it shows all of the proposed landscaping in and around the buildings, including hedges and fencing. The original plan was rather generic. One of the things we are asking for as part of this modification is to relocate some of the guest parking that had previously been alongside the common driveway parallel to the buildings from those locations to inside this island. So there's two proposed spaces on each side that will allow for more landscaping in front of the actual units. The spaces will be screened by fencing and landscaping on the sides and in between. And you can see the landscape layout here. There's a little bit more detail on this planting plan, and there's a planting schedule on the bottom left-hand corner, a plant list, all designed by the landscape architect. One final element to the request relates to this one single unit. The original plan had a slightly different footprint than what the applicant would like to do. So it has changed, but we believe it's still within the general spirit of the approval. I would like to turn it over to Mr. Skihill to talk to you about the subtle, the changes to that footprint.
Sure.
And we're both here for questions.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As Mike just alluded to, this building number, I think it says number 2 on there, footprint change is not really significant except for the fact that we're going to a 2-stall garage instead of the single-stall garage, which was approved at the original plan. And we're reversing the layout, so the garage is now downstream versus upstream towards Old Main Road. And that's the crux of the request on the foundation change.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? No. Okay. How would the board like to proceed?
Motion to approve.
Move to approve by Jerry. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm opposed.
Did you want to have somebody?
No.
No?
I
Okay.
mean, I don't think this is, significant change.
Sorry, you said it was significant?
I think it is. I don't necessarily think it's bad, but I'm just not sure why it's an administrative approval.
But we didn't have the vote, so that would be 4 to 1.
That carry? Super
That would
majority?
carry.
It would
Yeah.
carry,
Yeah.
yeah, it does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does Noreen want to chime in?
It was based on the applicant's request.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so that wraps up the administrative approvals that were asked to be taken out of order. On to new hearings. We have application 21-19 Velonis, 154 Edgewater Drive East in East Falmouth.
So application number 021-19, being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that Platon G. and Maria Villones of Lexington, Mass. have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-3C of the Code of Falmouth to raise and reconstruct the pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling on subject property known as 154 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass. For referrals, engineering general comments that no stormwater onto public property, abutters or rights of way. Concom, this project received an order of conditions from Concom on 5/15/19. No further comments from Concom or staff. From Health, the proposed home, same as existing, as there are 3 bedrooms and a finished basement. As long as the finished area in the basement is not used as a bedroom, there is no increase in wastewater flow. Applicant proposal of keeping the old cesspools is fine if there was no increase in flow. The proposed footprint versus existing doesn't negate area for future system replacement. He would like to have an area reserved to be shown on the plan prior to signing off on the building permit for a reserve area when replacement is needed. Assessors, no comment. Fire department, no comment. Water department, it does have an existing 1-inch service line. Planning, no comment. And there is 1 letter in the file regarding concerns regarding a right-of-way access.
For the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower, and I'm an attorney with Ahmet Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth. I represent the applicants, Platon and Maria Villones, the owners of 154 Edgewater Drive East in East Falmouth. They're here tonight to seek approval for the raise and rebuild of the single-family structure located at the property. This property is located on the eastern side of the Seacoast Shores Peninsula on a lot of 15,600 square feet in the residential C zoning district. A portion of this lot and a portion of the existing house is within the AE 13 flood zone. The applicants have owned this property for 9 years and are looking toward making this their primary residence, and in doing so need to improve the property. There is an existing one-story, three-bedroom house with a footprint of 1,984 square feet. It's non-conforming as to side yard setback, being 3.7 feet where 10 is required, and to the rear yard setback to the 3-foot contour, being 27 feet where 50 feet is required. The existing ridge height is approximately 16 feet. Since this isn't a flood zone and it doesn't presently comply with the flood zone standards, the renovations that the applicants are seeking will trigger compliance with those construction standards within a flood zone. They've chosen to raise and rebuild the structure in order to accommodate this. There will be a slight increase in square footage, but it will allow ultimately for a much more useful property for the applicants. What they're seeking is a new 3-bedroom dwelling, which will be built compliant with flood zone standards. As I mentioned, there was a footprint increase of approximately 200 square feet, but it's in substantially the same footprint and location as the existing house. Due to the existing nonconformities, this project does require a special permit under 240-3C. That section allows for pre-existing non-conforming structures to change by special permit of this board, provided that they're not substantially more detrimental than what presently exists. The board is asked to consider the standards of 240-216, as well as whether or not this creates a new dimensional nonconformity, impairs views and vistas from public ways, and reasonably conforms to the average dwellings in the neighborhood. As noted, this is substantially the same footprint as the existing house, but it will be improved to be flood zone compliant. The number of bedrooms will remain the same, and there is a slight increase in the square footage. Ultimately, the lot coverage by structure here will be 14.1%, which is well below the 20% that's allowed by right. The proposed ridge height will be 25 feet, which again is well below the 35 feet that's allowed by right. There's no impact on the existing nonconformities. There's no new nonconformity created. There's no impact on views and vistas, and it reasonably conforms to the other houses in the area. I have reviewed the correspondence submitted by one of the, I'm not sure if it was in the butter or not, regarding a right-of-way on the southern lot line. This proposal has no impact on that right-of-way, and that right-of-way is reflected on the plans that were submitted. This right-of-way was granted a number of years ago, but the correspondence indicates that it's somehow the owner of the surveying estate, it's their obligation to clear and maintain that right-of-way, which is simply not the case. Those entitled to use the right-of-way may do so, but there's no affirmative obligation on the owner of a surveying estate to clear or maintain a right-of-way. Beyond that, the issues regarding the right-of-way are really a private property matter and don't have any bearing on the standards of the decision that the board is asked to consider. On the merits of the application, there's no detriments to this project, and certainly none that would be considered substantially more detrimental than what presently exists. For these reasons, I would ask that the board grant the special permit, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Attorney Clower. James, you want to start us off?
No questions. I just, it's, how does one have a right over a right-of-way, but the person doesn't have to maintain or clear that so someone can use the right-of-way?
The owner of the dominant estate in an easement situation or a right-of-way situation has the right and the ability to clear, maintain, and use a right-of-way. The owner of the surveying estate does not have any affirmative obligation to clear or maintain that area.
I misunderstood. Okay, thank you.
Anything else here?
No.
Ken?
So existing, you're 3.7 feet from the northerly property
Mhm.
line, and you're not changing that?
It's
in any way?
remaining the same.
And what would be the, side yard setback to conform?
It'd be 10 feet.
So is there a reason why? I guess because of the proximity to the 3-foot contour, is that?
So it's partially the proximity to the 3-foot contour, it's partially the benefits of the existing location for the applicant, because it provides them with a really beautiful view of Childs River, and given that it's not going to be more detrimental than what presently exists, the idea was to leave it in the same location essentially.
I mean, it's seems like you could have moved it a couple of feet and not changed any of the views.
Part of the issue with that is conservation in the area around it because of the existing landscaping, the retaining walls. Changing the location would require, pretty substantial changes to the rest of the lot, and they were seeking to avoid that.
Okay. Well, that's really the only question I have this time.
Ed? Bob?
Just on the basement, I see there's a bath down there. What are the plans for finishing any space off downstairs?
It will be finished space. The basement will still be flood zone compliant, but there's no intent to use it as a bedroom. It will remain at 3
Will there
bedrooms.
be any partitions downstairs, or will it all be open?
You can come up here, Dan. This is Maria Valonius, the applicant.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
There'll be a utility room in the far corner next to that bath that you see. Right, and the rest we intend to leave open as a family room
That's all I have.
and storage.
Mary, anything?
Just something quite minor. The plans show a rinsing stall or a rinsing station. What is that?
Are we, just so I'm on the same page, are we looking at the proposed plan or the the existing plan?
I think it's an outside shower,
A rinsing station's generally an outside shower. I just didn't see it on the plan.
which is not
It's on the
allowed.
Okay.
architectural, the right elevation?
I see. So it'll be under the deck. It's an outdoor shower as a rinsing station.
Anything else?
I use a hose for my kids, but.
Attorney Clara, can you elaborate what's being done to be flood zone compliant?
Sure, the base elevation of the basement will be raised to be at least at elevation 14. So in order to be compliant with flood zone standards, you're required to have the first floor elevation of any habitable space at least 1 foot above the flood zone standard, above the flood zone level. So the basement elevation will be 14 feet.
And then the overall height of the house, you said, would be 25 foot
That's
even?
correct.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board at this time?
So just to clarify, if I could.
Sure.
So to achieve that, are you regrading, are you adding fill, what are you doing?
I'll let the engineer speak.
Mike Porcelli for the record. There's a minor elevation raising, not R-A-Z, R-A-I-S-E,
Yes.
of the lower level. There's only minor regrading incidental with the reconstruction of the house around the sides to just slope it around, but the topography on the water side lends itself to just, a step or two down. So it was a very small adjustment in the elevation of the lower level to make it FEMA compliant.
And you're remaining at 3 beds, and forgive me if you mentioned the septic, I didn't hear it.
Remaining at 3 beds, septic will remain the same, which the Board of Health said was sufficient.
Accessible, though.
Yes.
So is that rated for 3 beds then?
It's a cesspool, so
Oh.
it's not necessarily rated for
Okay.
anything.
Anything else from the board? Members of the public, have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? Seeing none, back to the board. How would you like to proceed?
Motion close. Second.
Motion to close by Ken and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
By Jerry, motion to close.
Whatever. We're interchangeable.
My apologies. All right. How would you like to proceed?
Motion to approve.
And that's made by Jerry. Is there a second for the time being?
Second.
I'll give that to Ken. Findings?
It's received Concom approval, or NOI approval, I guess. It's received Board of Health approval to maintain the cesspool, provided there's no increase in flow of bedrooms. Right, if I remember correctly. It's downstairs will be non-habitable? No, wait a minute, it's habitable, but it will not be a bedroom.
Exactly.
Testimony had it would be a family room,
Utility storage.
bath and utility.
Lot coverage is below maximum allowed, which is
20% will be allowed, right?
So 14.1% for structure, and then
It's going from.
That's the increase to
existing is
14.1.
12,
14.
It's going to 14,
Yeah, it's
12.7.
well below 20%. It meets the standards of 240-3C and 240-16.
I think it's worth noting that
They're maintaining that
the
northern end.
there's a modest increase in the height of the structure to 25 feet from, what is it currently? Did I hear 16?
Yeah, I think 16.
16 up to 25, and that's partially to become flood zone compliant. As far as 243C goes, just they're maintaining that northerly boundary. Was it 3 feet and change?
3.7 feet.
3.7. Anything else for findings? So it enhances the utilization of the property for the property owner. Should we move on to conditions for plans?
no increase in bedroom count. Reserve area to be shown on plan for future septic replacement.
Do we want an as-built? since
Well,
it's
that's,
so
you know,
close?
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
3.7 feet, pretty close.
That is kind of close.
We have to do one for Concom anyways, so.
And do we want it inspected by the engineer who inspects this stuff nowadays?
That's a good question.
Well, we've had previous issue, we have a condition coming up where, I mean, I don't know, are we routinely gonna have the engineer check it, or just a professional professional land surveyor certify the dimension? I don't care,
I'm happy with the land surveyor.
professional land surveyor. I think the term's professional land surveyor, rather than registered.
Okay, anything else for conditions, or?
I don't know if we should condition that no additional partitions be done in the basement, because they may meet definitions of bedroom space.
No,
It's an open space except for the bathroom and the
how about no bedroom in the
utility
basement?
room.
We have no bedrooms in the basement, huh?
Yeah, you're limiting it to 3 bedrooms, right?
I mean, I don't know
We said
why.
no increase in bedroom count, but we
Right.
want to be explicit about no bedrooms in the basement? Since
Yeah.
it is
They
habitable
can switch
space.
it around if they want to put a bedroom in the basement, and take a one upstairs. I mean, I'd hate to see this come back just because they want to switch things around.
I just didn't want to have something hit where if something's partitioned off without an open doorway, it now meets a bedroom definition, and if there's a complaint by somebody.
Or isn't that implicit in the in the limitation on bedrooms?
Well, it is, but we have a
Because if they-
10-year rule now.
Well,
It's hitting everything.
I'm just
I mean, it's
saying,
fine with no bedrooms, I just,
if somebody wants to partition their basement for some reason, not creating a bedroom, why do we care?
Point taken. All right, so no increase in bedrooms is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that wraps it up. Jerry made the motion to approve, second by Ken. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. This way.
Work on the new house, I put in a new septic.
next we have application 22-19, Barubi, 34 Ocean View Ave in North Falmouth.
So being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that David P. Barubi of Mansfield, Mass. applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-3C and 240-69E of the Code of Falmouth to construct additions to the first and second floor and renovate porch space exceeding 20% lot coverage by structures on subject property known as 34 Ocean View Avenue, North Falmouth. For referrals, engineering, general comments, project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters of rights of way. We do recommend that the board add a condition that requires the addition of dry wells, grade and garden, or stormwater measures for the roof area. Please make sure house number is visible from the street per section 99-1 upon completion of work. From the health department, property is in the New Silver Beach sewer service area, so there's a notation.
They should
So the-
apply to.
Yeah, so the property's in the New Silver Beach sewer service area. The town's New Silver Beach bylaw allows properties in the area up to 3 bedrooms by right. Beyond 3 bedrooms, a variance is required. On this application, they are keeping the 3 bedrooms. Assessors, no comment. Fire department, no comment. Concom, no comment. Planning, no comment. Water department, the water service needs to be upgraded to at least a 1-inch. And there's no letters of support or concerns. They did include a neighborhood comparison for lot coverages.
For the applicant tonight?
All right, good evening. My name is Steve Cook. I'm from Couture Bay Design. I'm the project designer. With me is David Barabee, the owner, and Buddy Hampton, the builder. This is, house was constructed in 1905. It's pre-existing non-conforming structure. David and his wife Marcia are looking to finish the house for year-round use. Right now, it's a older style house with the wraparound porch. The porches are in tough shape. The house is, construction isn't up to a lot of code requirements. And then the layout is all chopped up. There's a lot of smaller rooms. There's no first floor master. So what we're proposing is expansion of the first and second floors onto the north porch, close that in, add a new first floor master bedroom, addition on the rear of the house, rebuild the west and south porches because they're not properly supported, and then a whole new roof structure up top with a third floor roof deck, captures some views of the water. Right now, the house is 4.4 feet away from the north property line. When we're working on the same footprint on the main part of the house right now, where the porches are, and the new addition is gonna be 5.1 feet away from the property line, so we're not getting closer to where we are now. Our lot coverage is increasing from 18.1% up to 24.4% because of the new addition. So that's one change there. As Robert mentioned, we're staying at 3 bedrooms. We are in town sewer. And ridge height is increasing. It's increasing probably about 4, maybe 5 feet at the very most, so we're going up to 33 feet. Right now, we're in at 29, 30 feet. I couldn't get an accurate measurement on the ridge, but that's where I'm assuming it is now. And as comments mentioned, we will add dry wells, the house number, and we will upgrade the water line. With that, I'll answer any questions from the board.
Thank you. Mary, do you have anything?
Nope.
Bob?
No questions.
Ed?
It's definitely 3 bedrooms, right?
Yes.
Okay, because the original application was for 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
We took one out, we changed the plans, and we're showing a study on the second floor.
That's all I have.
Ken?
I'm a little confused about your ridge height
Yeah, there's a dimension on my plans that
looking-
shows, what, 32 feet, 11 and 3/4,
Well, the
so I
plans
rounded
I'm
to
looking at, are these existing? Oh, those are existing?
That's existing, yeah. Yeah. Should be on sheet
Is there a-
A2 there.
Sheet A2?
I think it's A2 shows the,
Is it 28
28-2.
What sheet is that?
that's the existing.
A3 has it as 32 feet, 11 and 3/4 inches.
Sheet A2, the right elevation shows.
32, 11 and 3/4.
3/4.
So when you is that from grade?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I see that it is.
So we're under the 35-foot maximum.
Because right, that's the point, as you said, you couldn't get an accurate ridge height. It's important to have an accurate ridge height.
Yeah, no, on the existing is what I mentioned, on the existing. Because I measured the building and drew it, but I didn't put a laser on it or
Gotcha.
measured, yeah. So I was assuming I'm in at 28, 29 feet, but the new is going to 33 feet.
Okay. That'll do it for me for the moment.
Okay,
You within the floodplain?
no,
Oh, you're not within the floodplain? Okay.
outside the floodplain.
And on the existing drawing where you show a shed, it says deck 1.1 feet.
Yeah.
That's a distance, why is it a?
Yeah, correct, yeah, it's right here on the site plan.
There's a deck on the side of the shed?
No, that's on the neighbor's property. That's a neighboring property,
All
see
right.
the property line? Yeah.
I wasn't sure what the hieroglyphics meant.
Anything else, Jerry?
No.
Oh,
I
The
understood.
shed is quite close, too.
James?
No questions.
Okay. No questions from me.
Okay.
Any members of the public have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? Seeing none, back to the board. How would we like to proceed?
Move to close.
Second.
Move to close by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Not everyone at once.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Bob,
Second.
and there's a second by Ed. Findings?
It's 240-3C, 240-69E, 240-216. Ridge height increased to 33 feet. Actually, I guess you could put 32, 11 and 3/4. Lot coverage by structure increasing from 18.1 to 24.4. No. Neighborhood comparison for coverage by structure, it falls in the middle range. No increase in bedrooms, staying at 3. Property is served by the New Silver Beach sewer system. Increases utilization, no new nonconformity. Applicant will add stormwater measures for roof runoff. And will make sure house number is visible from street upon completion. Will need a water service upgrade to 1 inch.
Okay. Anything for conditions?
Per plans, no additional bedrooms, remaining at 3. Due to the sewer service area.
Okay, I think that just about covers it, unless anyone else has anything. Okay, motion to approve was made by Bob and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Two more eyes down there, or?
Oh, yes.
Yep. Okay, unanimous.
Great, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, see, you got both of those.
comparison.
We need smaller plans. The table used to seem big, now it seems small.
Okay, up next, we have application 24-19, Remisa Trustees, 8 Worcester Ave in Falmouth.
So being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that John S. and Christina A. Remisa, trustees of London, United Kingdom, have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-3C of the Code of Falmouth to raise and reconstruct the pre-existing non-conforming detached cottage on subject property known as 8 Worcester Ave, Falmouth, Mass. For referrals, Concom, flood zone AE 13. Applicant will have to file an administrative review application with the Conservation Department to ensure stormwater is contained on site, i.e. dry wells. Conservation staff will contact applicant about administrative review. And the accessory structure should be flood compliant. The first floor elevation, looks like 1 foot above flood elevation. For water, we installed a new service in 2017, 2018. Owner should upgrade the service line at their property to 1 inch. Fire department, no comment. Planning, no comment. Assessors, no comment. And then there's one letter regarding concerns. It looks like from an abutter. That's it for the file.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Again, for the record, my name is Kevin Clower, and I am an attorney with Ahmed Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth. I represent the applicants, John and Christina Remisa, in their capacity as trustees, and the owners of 8 Worcester Avenue here in Falmouth. They're seeking permission to raise and rebuild the accessory building located at the rear of their lot. This lot is located on Worcester Avenue in the heart of Falmouth Heights on a lot of 3,739 square feet in the Residential C zoning district. Presently, this lot contains a 2.5-story single-family dwelling with an existing accessory structure located at the rear. The property is non-conforming in a number of ways. The front yard setback is 4.6 feet where 25 is required. The side yard setback to the dwelling is 3.4 feet where 10 is required. The side yard setback to the accessory structure is 1.6 feet where 10 is required. The rear yard setback is 1.6 feet where 10 is required. The lot coverage by structure is 36.4%, where 20% is allowed by right, and up to 25% is allowed by special permit. And the lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking is 51.4%, where 40% is allowed by right. The applicant is proposing to raise and rebuild the accessory structure in order to provide additional space and to improve their living conditions. So they're really trying to generate more storage space, so that's the purpose of this. The cottage, what they've called the cottage, the accessory structure, is in the exact footprint of the existing, with storage in the above loft space. The ridge height of the proposed structure is 21 feet 6 inches. This, due to the number of nonconformities, does require a special permit under 240-3C, which again allows for pre-existing nonconforming structures to be changed by special permit of this board, provided they're not substantially more detrimental than what presently exists. The board actually to consider 240-216, the code rather, asked the board to consider the standards of 240-216 and whether or not that would create, the changes create a new dimensional nonconformity, impairs views of vistas, and reasonably conforms to the average dimensions in the neighborhood. What the applicants are proposing in this case does not increase any of the existing nonconformities, nor does it create any new nonconformities. There's no change to the number of bedrooms. I want to take a moment to discuss some of the referrals that came in, as well as the correspondence. We did have a chance to review the engineering referral. They noted that some of the plans seem not to have been stamped by a professional land surveyor. I think that's erroneous. The physical copies that were submitted were stamped. I suspect that the engineering department reviewed the PDF copy that was submitted, which didn't have a stamp, as it was a digital version of the plan that was printed. And as to their comment about dry wells, the applicant's certainly amenable to the board's kind of typical condition in these situations where dry wells can be added at the discretion of the engineers if they feel it is necessary to contain runoff. Regarding the abutter correspondence, I think it was from the owners of 5 Montgomery Court, which is to the rear of this property. They claim a disparity in the lot line location. I reviewed what they submitted and asked our engineer to do so as well. We both feel that this correspondence really doesn't offer any information that would contradict the plans that were submitted. The back line of this property is well established. It was located with on-the-ground bounds that were found on the site and located on the plan, and also shown on the abutters plans. Regarding their other concerns, they mentioned excavation. This is going to be on a slab, so there's limited excavation involved. And the roof line will be entirely within the lot, much the same as the roof line is presently. This proposed structure is not substantially more detrimental than what presently exists. There's no impact on the views and vistas from public ways. It does conform to the other properties in the neighborhood, and there's no adverse effects, and certainly none that would be considered more detrimental than what presently exists. For these reasons, and given these considerations, I would ask the board to grant the special permit, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Attorney Clower. James, you want to start us off?
Not at this time, no questions.
Jerry?
Is Worcester Ave perpendicular to Worcester Court?
I've been trying to figure out what's Worcester Ave and what's... Yes, it's essentially, yeah. So this fronts on the Greenway, essentially.
Worcester Ave comes from the beach, and Worcester Court goes towards the beach. That's the confusion.
There it is.
If we ask anyone to speak, you'd have to come to the podium. And is he the applicant, or? Okay.
I don't believe,
Okay, so
I
we'll-
don't believe so.
We'll
I
have
haven't
your
met my
chance to,
clients.
The
thank
reason
you, sir.
maybe I misunderstood. That is a public road and public right-of-way.
That is, you're correct, you're
Oh, I
correct.
thought I read someplace where it was a private.
No, the plan does note private, but that is incorrect.
Oh, okay, all right.
Anything else, Jerry?
No.
Ken?
Well, I have the same question. Why don't, well, as per an earlier project, as your 1.6 feet from
So
the rear and side property lines, why not make it 2.6 feet?
the issue there is the septic system. They can't come any closer to the septic system than presently exists. And in order to leave a walkway between the house and the accessory structure, you really can't come much closer than what's there. And any shift is going to affect the setbacks to the septic.
Okay, so there's no change to lot coverage, is that correct?
Correct.
Is this structure higher than the existing?
It is. It is. The existing structure is, because they're adding a second floor. So the existing structure is 13 feet 2 inches. This is 21 feet 6 inches.
Anything else, Ken?
No changes to the main house at all?
Correct.
Okay.
Ed?
No, I don't have any questions. It's like pretty straightforward.
Bob?
So I've got a couple of questions. So the main house had a previous special permit, and on that application, there's a land surveyor certified plan, and those dimensions don't match this land surveyor certified plan, so there are inconsistencies with it.
I haven't seen that plan, so I can't speak to it.
Yeah, so you could maybe review it in the file, and it has to do with structure and also the lot itself, boundary lines. I did have a question regarding if this was approved. How do you build something like this that close to a lot line without going on adjacent property?
Carefully, I suspect.
You know, I mean, because you really are dealing with that 1 to 2 foot space, and there's an overhang on the roof, so how do they actually get that constructed?
I mean, it would begin with demolition of the existing building. And I can't speak much to construction methodology. I simply can't. So, I don't know the exact answer. I do know that we have any number of properties which have very close setbacks that have been gone through raise and rebuilds all over town.
So maybe he could submit something that just says how the construction is gonna be done at that close to a lot line.
Sure.
I noticed that the main house does not have gutters, but it looks like it does have some kind of a stone trench drywalls around it, and the plans on this seem like they were planned for the same. So I also wanted to get more of the details on that. And also on your elevations, you said it's a slab construction, but what was submitted looks like it's post. Looks like it's on sonotubes.
Does.
And also, while you're on that, just so you don't put it away, where is the entrance?
It's this door here. This is a doorway.
So that's not a window?
No.
So maybe they could, even on that, on the plan, because on the plan, so how do you get into it? Do you have to step up?
I believe
Stone step.
there's a stone step shown on the existing.
So the stone, yeah, so the stone step shows on the side, and it looks like
Mhm.
you're changing the entrance to to the side versus where it is now. It almost looks like that's a transom window, and maybe they forgot to put the doorway in. Because the doorway doesn't show on the other plans either.
I mean, on the proposed plans, it looks as though that's intended as a doorway.
Yeah, so maybe they could just give us some more details on that, if that actually is the doorway or not. And they won't be coming any closer to the septic, correct? It's
Correct.
currently there now. And I'd also like to know on when they do that construction schedule, how they handle any equipment over the septic system, where it's so close an area in there.
Mhm.
And that's all I have, you know.
Bob, Mary, anything?
Yeah, are there gonna be any gutters?
No, I mean, I believe that's what Mr. Dugan was expressing with regards to the dry wells. So I don't believe there's intent to have gutters. I'll have to check with the applicant.
Yeah, you know, your roof is higher, more runoff, close to the other garage, you might consider.
Close to the other property.
I can certainly ask. I don't know the answer.
Anything else, Mary?
I just had one more question. So in the referrals, it does say that it's in flood zone, so is this gonna have to be raised?
I don't believe so. I believe it meets the standard, but
So on the Concom referral, it says that it will need to meet it, and it seems that it's not above, so maybe they could check on that.
absolutely.
Any other questions from the board right now?
Yeah, I had a question, and Bob, how do we resolve the issue between the original special permit surveyor and this surveyor? Do they have to come back?
Well,
Correct.
they're both certified, so I just don't know what the inconsistency is, so maybe if they look at it, they'll know why.
Well, that
Because
was
it's
one of the-
actually, because even there are inconsistencies on the dimensions of the accessory structure, but there's also inconsistencies on the actual dimensions of the lot.
What should be resolved?
They'll need to figure
I mean,
out.
on the special permit, on this, or, you know. I mean, I don't know if we can go ahead and, we can approve this, but then, maybe not, or maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah, they may have to resolve that in advance, just to see or explain why the difference is in the.
I mean, that was one of the abutters' concerns too, I think. If Attorney Clower, wasn't that one of the issues on where the property line was?
That was,
How it conflicts with the previous special permit?
so, again, I haven't seen the previous special permit for this property, or the plan for it, but I can tell you that I spoke about it at length with our engineer, and this is based, Falmouth Heights is based on an old, relatively old plan, and, but there were bounds set, and in doing his surveying, he did indicate that he used the on-the-ground bounds that were at the site. So,
Would it be presumptuous of me to say that maybe you want to go for continuation to come back?
I think we have to. There are some unresolved questions that have been presented, and we're happy to try to get that information and come back. But, you know, if there's any other questions, we'd love to hear them, so we can address them accordingly.
The drawings say they found all the bounds.
That's
Mhm.
true.
Yeah, the other one says the same thing.
Oh, it does?
How old was the original one?
20, it's not too, I'm gonna say maybe 2012.
Well, that's kinda odd.
It's not too long ago, because they actually took down the original, it's the same owner. It's just a different, but I think it's 2012.
I guess discussion amongst, oh, we're not into
Yeah,
discussion
we're
amongst the
not-
board.
We're not quite there yet.
Okay, sorry.
We'll just ask any members of the public have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project. Sir?
It's a pretty big increase in height.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chairman, and to the general public. My name is Manny D'Ambrosio. I'm the brother of Elaine D'Ambrosio. She is the abutter. Her address is 5 Montgomery Ave. The back portion of her property abuts the back portion of 8 Worcester Ave. I would first like to start by reading for the record, to be part of the minutes of this meeting, our areas of concern. There are 2 plot plans. There's a plot plan of land located on 5 Montgomery Ave, dated February 6th, 2003, with a seal, and it was signed by a registered professional land surveyor. There is another certified plot plan located at 8 Worcester Ave, Falmouth, Mass., dated March 13th, 2019. It has a seal, and it is signed by a professional land surveyor. You'll note that there's a change in the titles, but as time goes on, titles do change. I rise to express the following areas of concern. There's a major disparity in the location of the boundary line by 25% between the proposed detached cottage to be located at 8 Worcester Ave and a pre-existing garage at 5 Montgomery Ave. There's a sketch that you have in the back which basically shows that between building and building, it's 4 feet 1 inch. If you use the plot plan dated the 13th of March, it states that there's 1.6 feet from the foundation to the boundary. That's the proposers, 1.6 feet. If you now look at the plot plan on the other side from the garage, the plot plan states 3.5 feet. So if you add 1.6 feet and 3.5, you end up with 5.1 feet. When you look at building to building, between the plot plans say it's 5.1 feet, you only have 4.4 feet 1 inch. And that's where you get the discrepancy between your 4 feet and 5 feet to beat your 25%. All right, so that's major. 25% difference in a survey. By the way, the boundaries we're talking about, these are monuments. They're of the old type. They're stone as opposed to the granite with the pin, or they're just chiseled in the center. Going further, area of concern, a detailed foundation plan should be provided to the ZBA prior to judgment. And the rationale is the area of concern that we just mentioned about the dimensions on the 2 different plot plans, the distance from the foundation of the proposed cottage to the property boundary using 5 Montgomery Ave plot plan is just under 7 inches. From a foundation to the line, 7 inches, gentlemen. That's the foundation, not the excavation. However, and using the other plot plan, it's 1.6 feet. 1.6 feet is less than the length of this ruler, just to give you a perspective. The concern is the construction requirements may exceed the limitation of the parcel boundary on 8 Worcester Ave.
Mr. D'Ambrosio, I hate to cut you off, but we typically limit public comment to 2
To
minutes.
2 minutes. I'll be within the 2 minutes.
I
I've
gave-
probably used about 45 seconds.
You've used 4 minutes.
Well, then, let me
Is that a
go
prepared
quickly.
s-
Let me
If
move.
that's a prepared
I-
statement, you
I
can
make a
submit
motion for an extension of time.
If that's a prepared statement, you can certainly send, give it
It's
to the
already
clerk
been
to be
received. It
stamped.
was on Monday.
Oh, so we've already,
It's- And then there's some additional points. We will pass on those.
well, then,
but-
if you're reading from the letter that you've already
No,
sent to the
now I'm
board-
going to reach for additional, and I'm going to provide the regulation, the state regulations that need to be addressed. The first thing that the plot plan needs
Mr.
to
Chairman?
be changed.
I propose we give them an additional 2 minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay,
Thank you.
2 minutes.
You want to vote it?
Yep, wait, that would be nice. Vote in favor of giving him 2 more minutes?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The minimum setback of a foundation is identified to be 10 feet as identified in Chapter 240 zoning of paragraph 240-68 setback, section B.1. And if there's any deviation from that, it's up to the proposer to justify it. The next item, underpinning design due to the proximity of the pre-existing garage by a registered design professional as identified in the International Building Code, Soils Foundations, Section 1803, paragraph 1803.5.7, and Section 1804, excavation, grading, and fill section 1804.1, excavation near foundations. By the way, all those that I'm referencing, you're going to have a package which will have also those regulations attached. And last but not least, and I've heard comments about how close it is to the garage, the depth of, oh, excuse me, that's, then is the frost line. Has to do with the depth of foundations required to meet frost protection in accordance with section 1809 shallow foundations, paragraph 1809.5. However, there's a frost protection exemption of if the construction area is 600 square feet or less for a light construction and having an eave height of less than 10 feet. I believe the eave height here is more. So the exception does not follow. So the issue has to do with the underpinning that we talked about, which is a major concern, which needs to be addressed. And here are 2 copies. And also, just for your in the back, there's some pictures that you can see. There was a person
You can
standing
submit it
up.
through the clerk.
Here are 2 sets, and you can see the distance of the person standing up between the 2 buildings.
You're taking up your time.
You are at your 2
I
minutes.
just want to be complete and succinct. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, no
Yes, I do. Under what authority are we supposed to accept a registered professional engineer of the butter versus the, professional land surveyor, versus the registered professional surveyor of the proposer?
question. In fact, we even have an attorney here, which would probably...
I'm asking you for the
Okay,
site.
It's my understanding...
Sir, we'd just ask you to speak at the podium. It's for the benefit of the listeners at home.
It's my, the bottom that I did not read has to do with the plan of which you're asking of the abutter has been filed at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds on July 14th, 2003.
I understand, okay?
It's already been filed.
I understand, sir. No further comment by you or me, by me is needed, and I suggest not by you.
Any other
I
questions?
just have one question. Do you know what the length of the roof overhang is on your property to the lot line?
The drawings that have been presented to the ZBA that I was given a copy of,
But your own, on your sister's property, do you know how much of an overhang is on that garage on that side?
well, the overhang would be On the shed?
I'm asking in terms of construction, if someone's gonna be replacing the current accessory building, which has an overhang, and you have an overhang, there's gonna be a lot less distance in between than foundation or property line, and I'm trying to figure out what work area is. So do you have any idea what that dimension is between overhangs?
Well, you have 4 feet between the two, and an overhang would typically be about 2 feet from the foundation. So if you take 2 feet and 2 feet on new construction, you would end up with 4 feet. In other words, no overhang.
Thank you.
Old construction is not the same, however.
I have a question for Attorney Clower.
Well, let me ask,
Oh, sorry.
let me ask if there's anyone else out there, any questions, comments, concerns from members of the public? Nope, okay. Attorney Clower?
Would your client, I guess to avoid this dispute, which I don't know which is correct, but, you know, would your client be willing to cut the depth of the building by a foot to 11.3?
I can't answer that in this moment.
It wouldn't be any closer to this, and it wouldn't affect the northern setback, it just might avoid some.
I simply don't have the ability to say yes or no to that question. So it can be inquired, I can
I was
raise.
gonna suggest it for both dimensions, just downsize it a little bit, because it's an awful tight fit.
So the 20 feet to 19?
Yeah.
Would just arbitrarily go to-
Well, I'm just trying to create a little space there, so there's room for.
I know, I mean, if we say a little space, we suggest 6 inches, I say, suggest a foot.
Yeah, I suggest a foot.
You are learning.
I can certainly inquire of my client. What I would say is that the existing building that's there is in the same shape and configuration as they're proposing. So the
Yeah, but
question.
now you're proposing to do something new, and so we'd like to improve the situation.
Sure. But the question is not an improvement. The question is it substantially more detrimental than what presently exists?
That is the question you.
And improvement does not necessarily, and substantially not more substantially detrimental does not necessarily equal improvement. They are, and I'm not opposed to asking the question of my client, but I do want to raise the point that in order to not be substantially more detrimental, it need not necessarily be an improvement.
What about the fact that you're so close to the property line, another foot would make construction easier?
Again, Mr. Thomas, I'm not saying yes or no, and I'm happy to ask the question of my client. I just wanted to raise, I just wanted to state that.
Legal point.
So, I mean, I know we have some questions to address, happy to do so. I suppose I would ask for continuance. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to take them at this point.
One more question. There's a pergola shown on this, you know, elevation. Is that in addition to the 20 feet?
I suspect so, but I'm not sure that would count towards lot coverage.
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. Because we do count overhangs on roofs.
But that would be a solid overhang.
That's what I say, I don't know the answer.
So, I can ask that question of the building commissioner? If you feel that would be the appropriate.
Well, it would be better than nothing.
I mean, if we're going for continuation, we can get the information.
Yeah.
If we agree to a continuation, as so wisely was proposed a half hour ago.
Smart man.
Bob, you had something?
Yeah, I just have just one question. So on the raise and reconstruct, is it gonna be the same roof as on the main house, which is a metal roof? Because my guess is that's why they didn't use gutters.
I'll have to inquire. There's no materials listed, so.
Sounds like we might be heading toward a continuation.
I'd be happy, do we want any more input from the public? Have we got it all?
I think we have it all.
Yep.
Attorney Clower,
Can I request an IFC drawing?
What's an IFC?
I would, I would just say that we're not required to have construction-level plans for, at this point, because the applicant's not gonna go forward with the expense of having substantially more detailed construction plans drawn up if the project's not approved. And that's not something that the board has typically required, so I would ask that we not be required to do that.
Okay, as far as the continuance goes, do you have an understanding of what the board's looking for? I think,
I have a number of, I took notes as we went, so I have a pretty solid idea of what information we're looking for. Ultimately, I can present, in terms of the plans, which seems to me to be one of the larger questions, I can give the information to our engineer. Our engineer is someone who I've done a lot of work with over the years, and I think does a very thorough job. I'll bring it to his attention, but ultimately, if he's stamping a plan and showing, finding bounds and determining it, I have a hard time imagining a scenario where that is not going to be, if not completely accurate, at least based on a really firm grasp in reality.
So it appears that just on the plans, just so we know where we stand, that we currently have 3 separate plans.
So you've indicated
So
that.
the first plan was for the remises that were drawn by Mike Borzelli.
Mhm.
Second is the plans for the remises that you had drawn by Matt Costa, and
Mhm.
whatever the abutters plan is.
The abutters plan is for his property, their property. So I'm not sure how indicative that is of our property.
No, but they have read in the testimony what the discrepancy, so you may want to look at all 3.
I think, yeah, I agree they should look at all 3, but I think they're under no obligation to validate the abutters' plans. They have to validate what they're building and resolve any conflict between Borselli's plan and this plan.
Yeah, because the board did rely on that previous plan for their first special permit, so if there's a difference, we need to know what the difference is.
I have a question.
sure.
What kind of a foundation is underneath the existing building? You know,
I believe that's on slab, but I will confirm.
it's on a slab?
But the new
They're gonna
building,
pour a new slab?
We're gonna find out exactly what the new building's gonna be.
right, so,
Is it gonna be a new slab, or is it?
Well, that's one of the questions that
Gonna
Mr.
check.
Dugan posed to us.
Is it gonna be,
Clearly
you know,
shown by-
footings and things like that?
That's some of the information we're coming back with.
Because if there's footings, they'll be in the next yard, you know? Digging.
What's our next available date, Noreen, for,
Attorney Clower, how long do you think it might take to get you that information?
I suspect most of this information is gonna be pretty readily available. Where it gets, the 2 things I don't know about are the reconciliation of the plans and if there ends up being a change to the proposed building. So I would ask what the next date is, and then I'll tell you if I think we can accommodate by then.
Next date is June 13th. After that, we have the 27th and then July 11th.
I would suggest the 13th might be tight, so I would suggest the 27th would be a better date.
motion to continue to June 27th,
second?
6:30 here in Town Hall.
Okay, motion to continue was made by Ken, second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There you go. Sure.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break.
But it's okay.
Okay, we are back. On to our open meeting agenda items. We have the minutes from May 30th, 2019. I believe they're going to be a hold until next time.
Yep.
We've done items 2, 3, and 4, so up next would be item number 5, the discussion and possible vote decision on 115-18, Woods Hole Partners LLC, 533 Woods Hole Road in Woods Hole. Attorney Clower, are you representing the applicant tonight?
I am playing solo on this one. Again, for the record, my name is Kevin Clower, for the third time this evening, and I represent the applicant, Woods Hole Partners LLC. We really appreciate Ms. Stockman giving us the opportunity to review the decision. We've exchanged some correspondence over the last few days. There was some correspondence submitted yesterday, and as far as I'm aware, it's still part of the things we addressed in that correspondence was still part of the current draft decision, and I wanted to raise some of those issues. Some of them are very important to the integrity of our plans and proposal. The first issue, I think, is actually relatively minor, but the findings refer to the Chambers easement being as for Chambers' sole and exclusive use. It's not an exclusive easement, that's a shared easement. So that's just a very minor note. I think a bigger issue for us, though, is that the decision, as it hadn't in the past drafts, suddenly said that the height limitation was going to be 2.5 stories. And that's located in 2 locations. The first in the preamble, which begins now therefore, and also in
Wait, give us pages.
Sure. Paragraph, now therefore on page 11.
Okay.
So now therefore on page 11, it begins, it states that to allow construction of 43 residential units within 7 2.5-story buildings. That should read, we believe, 5 2.5-story buildings and 2 3-story buildings. And then condition 16, which is on page 15, condition 16 on page 15, states that the building height is limited to 2.5 stories and a maximum of 35 feet. That condition's inconsistent with the plans that we have in front of the board, as well as some of the latter discussions that were had regarding the height limitation. Town council did end up agreeing with the building commissioner and with our assessment that the building height in the business redevelopment district is not subject to the 2.5-story limitation that is applicable in other zoning districts. So we were surprised to see this condition come up in this draft because that ran contrary to the plans that we had submitted and the discussions that had taken place. And then on page 12.
Kevin, I just have one quick question on that.
Sure.
If we change that and take out the 2.5 stories, do we need to amend your application? Because the application only mentions 2.5.
I certainly could amend the application. I'd be happy to do so.
I just didn't know if it was needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time the application was submitted in December, I don't think there was an understanding that it was in fact 3 stories at that point. But that's something that has sort of morphed as this application has processed through the works.
This is just reflecting what you asked for, I think, right?
Well, they asked for it on the plans, which is not in the application, but they could always amend the application.
Attorney Clower, did you have any other major points?
The only other one.
We'll let you do that and then
The only
circle
other
back.
substantial issues, page 12 refers to it says the first 50 feet from Fern Lane abutters shall be no touch.
Yeah, I thought that was,
And that works for most of the area behind Building A, but not for the northeasterly corners of Building A. Although the building setback is 70 feet, the limit of work in the northeast corner is 50 feet. The driveway into Building A and the fenced dumpster pad are within 40 feet of the property line, though more than 75 feet from any house. All that is shown in the site plan layout plan that is referenced. Respectfully, we suggested that it might be substituted with the limit of work line shown in the site layout plan. Shall be demarked by fencing throughout construction. The area beyond that line shall be no touch where all vegetation shall remain. And then there was one more thing submitted today. There were some very minor corrections to some of the plan references, because there's been a lot of plans and a lot of dates and a lot of revisions that have been submitted. But Bob indicated in correspondence, and I'll read from his correspondence, it says, "I also want to express our concern about the fact that the height of buildings is specified in condition 1 to the 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. And condition 2 says that any deviations, no matter how minor, determined after the fact shall be subject to a full hearing. A building official and a project surveyor have advised that it is impossible to expect that the project can be completed without at least some minor deviation. I respectfully suggest that there should be some exception for deviations that the board or the zoning administrator agrees are immaterial. Any deviation that violates dimensional requirements specified in the zoning bylaw may be considered material, and I respectfully suggest that in the second sentence of condition 2 shall be changed to may." We had a discussion with a number of engineers today, actually, and their statement to us was, you can label a building height, and you can get a building height, but building to within 1/8 of an inch is incredibly difficult, and that's something that would not be known till after the fact of the construction. So, if there's a change of, material change, a number of inches, that's a problem, and we understand that, but if it's 10 feet, and 5'6" versus 11 inches and 5'6" versus, you know what I'm trying to say here. I was told there'd be no math.
But we became lawyers.
So, we think that there could be some, we're not asking for a lot of forgiveness here, but we're saying it shouldn't be held to the 1/8 of an inch in those situations, because it's inevitably going to lead to a situation where a height certification is done, and then we have a situation where work has been completed, and we're then asking for a full modification of the special permit based on the following condition.
So those are your main.
Those are our big issues. Those are the ones that we
Those are
wanted to
major-
zoom in on.
All right, so let's circle back to the first one that you mentioned, the chambers easement, for lack of a better term. You stated that it wasn't for sole and exclusive use?
Yeah, it's a shared easement.
And that's still gonna be marked on the plans?
Sure.
And what about the actual access to the chambers property? Would be in the rear near the,
It'll be where it currently is. It's essentially, I did bring the plans in case.
So it'll be per plan? One of them is?
I have a couple questions on the easement too, when you.
So I think it might be helpful to look at the existing conditions. If you look at the existing conditions, you can see the easement under the mouse over here, which comes in to the property right under the soil evaluator's log.
So could you go back to that landscape plan, that one there? So the easement that you just pointed
You'll
to.
see this access area right here?
Okay, so that would be dirt or gravel? It's not, because on the plan, I looked at just the black and white.
Sure.
So you couldn't tell if it was
Sure.
planting area or if it was grass area.
Sure. No, that's intended as the access area there. And we will, as is required, that path will be left open.
Refers to the exclusive use. That's what he objects to.
any other questions, Bob?
No, it's just that, while we're on the, just subject of the easements, we can get that over with.
Sure.
I would like to add the easement into the findings section. It doesn't appear in there now. So I'd like to add a finding that there is an easement for butter chambers across 533 Woods Hole Road,
Where would you like to add it?
just in the findings section.
Yeah, but
Well, I have two, so I don't know if you'd put these separately. The second one is that at the eastern driveway entrance for 533 Woods Hole Road, there is a sign posted for 551 Woods Hole Road active driveway, along with a copy of a true attest by Deputy Sheriff of the deed of easement that's been recorded in the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds. Because that currently exists on the property and the location it's at now, I'd like to have it put in the findings. And my concern with the address is, it appears that the only access to Chambers property, if it was for fire or ambulance, is through this easement, and I don't know if that 551 is the only address shown. So when emergency vehicles go to that area, they could get to that property if needed. And that may have been why that was posted. I couldn't find another area where you access Chambers, so.
Did you want it in the findings or a condition?
Well, I'd like to put it in findings, because I don't think we can condition it, but I'd like it to say that it's there now, and then if they do something with it,
Okay.
you know, it's their issue with the abutter, but I'm more worried about the address itself. If that address does disappear off the property, I don't know if other vehicles would know if something happened at 551, how to get to it. And that way, we don't have to go into details of the easement, because they did post a recorded easement, and they could work out whatever their terms are with the recorded easement. And there is a,
Anyone have any thoughts?
On that, no, I agree with Bob.
Anyone else want to weigh in
On what?
on the easement?
Oh.
And, I suppose his proposed language for a finding?
It's, finding 15 on page 15.
yeah, so what we can do is, let's see.
On that one, the PLS should be professional land surveyor. I'm assuming that's what PLS means.
I would assume.
Page 15 is conditions, I believe.
Yes. The 16-foot wide easement for 551 Woods Road. Chambers must be maintained as shown on the plans endorsed by should be professional land surveyor, not a PLS.
Right. Well, there's a lot of small
Okay.
Scribner-type errors that I found, including, you know, disagreement with,
Well, at least with the easement, there is a condition there, at least should be finding to back that up, so.
I agree.
I'm supportive of
agree.
what
Well, the
Paul said.
question is if it's a Scribner area, fine. What PLS means is probably,
No, I agree with you, Jerry.
Oh,
I
okay.
think these things need to be properly
Cited.
recorded, because someone might look at this in 10 years and, what the heck were they talking about?
might look at it next year and say.
Right.
So do you want the easement in both the findings and the condition, or just one?
It's
Yes.
in-
I think it's good to be in both.
Yeah, I think so.
It's in the condition, isn't it, 15?
It's in the
You can
condition.
use the condition we have and then just add the findings.
Page 15, I think,
Yes.
item 15.
Well, my only issue, there's a current condition, but there should be a finding to back up the condition.
Right.
We normally
We
do that
agree.
with
I thought we
decisions.
agreed with the finding.
Right.
I thought.
I don't want to belabor the point about the easement, and I'm just kind of rolling it around in my head in terms of,
Kevin, you referred to some language that
Page 10,
said
though, just-
exclusive, and it's not exclusive. Where is
Um,
that?
I removed
took it
that
out.
Oh,
from,
that's been taken,
I
okay.
removed that from the
Oh,
current
it's already been
draft.
addressed.
Removed it.
This one here?
Okay, I just like
She's
them.
2 steps ahead of us.
Right, but
She removed it, so no excuses.
Oh,
Just says use of.
What I was getting at with the Chambers easement, and I really don't want to belabor this point, but we've discussed that during the construction process, that easement may be relocated, because pursuant to, you know, Massachusetts case law, that is something that the owner of a surveying estate can do, and as long as the purpose of the easement isn't frustrated. So during the construction process, there may be some
So-
relocation of
Should
that.
that be a finding?
So under conditions, would it be, instead of saying,
An easement,
the 16-foot wide easement must be maintained,
a 16-foot wide easement must be maintained.
okay,
A6.
a 16,
And, you know, I know right now it's as shown in the plans endorsed by PLS.
must be maintained and remain passable at all times. That's really all you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That-
I think that would be
Yeah.
more appropriate.
So the only other thing,
Easement gives wiggle room to the parties if they need to move it.
Right.
yeah, the only other thing
Right.
I don't know regarding conditions, and I guess you'd have to check with fire or something, is can that address ever be removed or not from that entrance?
What we certainly could do is, in the event that the entrance was shifted, so it went from the easterly entrance to the westerly entrance, we would certainly agree to a relocation of that address sign during that time.
So maybe put that the address stays at whatever driveway entrance is gonna be used.
That's fair.
So would it be okay to say a 16-foot wide easement for benefit of
Mm-hmm.
Chambers, I
Yeah.
guess it is?
And maybe just put from Woods Hole Road, numbered 551 Woods
I think that's
Hole.
perfectly fine. I just don't want to get caught in a situation
Yeah,
where
good
we're
point.
creating a,
Right, just,
Oh,
I think
I
the only
understand.
other point was that on the final plan, that they referenced the easement on
Absolutely.
that final plan.
absolutely.
Okay, and then maybe we should say that, and shall be referenced on
The as-built,
As-built? Yeah, by then you'd know if it's relocated.
final as-built plan.
So if we're all set with the easement, we can move on to the next point. It's the 2.5 versus 35,
Yeah, there's a couple
What?
places where
and
that's
there's a few
is.
places.
Question, if we allow the application to be amended, is that a Scribner error, or do we go back to square one? How does that impact our process?
All right, so just so that you know, the language for the 2.5 came directly from the application page itself.
I understand, but you're
But
proposing,
I know that
We
you
should
have
have held 'em to it.
discussed up to a maximum of 35
but
feet.
if we amend it now to take
picking
that
Mr.
out,
Mr. Clower knows
if
that
we amend that to allow them to take it out, what does it do to the process? I mean, does it start,
So here's the point, is you have discussed throughout the meeting, there's been discussion about an allowance to build up to 35 feet. And there has been discussion about stories. You looked at the plans have shown a half-story that is more toward a third floor as opposed to a half-story. So I just think it's the board's discretion how you want to proceed with
well, could we just ignore it rather than triggering something that could,
I think
have
it's
an
just,
unnecessary-
it's your vote.
I don't think we should ignore it, because the plans clearly are not 2.5-story plans. They're,
well, no, this is the application, I'm sorry.
I think with the risk of overstepping myself, I think Mr. Thomas is saying, ignore the wording of the original application and go with what's actually been approved on the plans. I don't believe a submission of an amended application would trigger any sort of re-notification.
That's what I was,
I don't believe it would. I happen to have to read through Chapter 40A fairly recently, and I didn't catch anything to that effect. Nor am I aware of anything in our bylaw that would require it, and we do allow for amended applications. So if it's going to clear up this confusion in a meaningful and expeditious way, I think the best thing to do might be simply for us to submit an amended application, which we could have, I could go to my office and have it before you're done here tonight, if you'd like.
I'll defer to the rest of the, we can cover it in a minute.
so we had lots of discussion about this point, so it's, the public certainly had plenty of opportunity to hear about it. And we had legal opinions that went in all directions
Certainly
from the
did.
same people.
That's always fun.
So, I would agree with Attorney Clower that it's not like the public would be snookered, oh, they changed the application from 2.5 to 3 after the fact.
So can we agree that just
But
making
I think for clarity, it ought to be in there.
in the minutes or in the application? One, he either submits an amended application or not, that's all.
I think you'd probably submit it amended. I mean,
Yeah, I
it seems
think-
like we're
okay.
agreeable to
I would
the
like to see-
taking out the 2.5
Okay,
stories if you can
let's
amend
do
it.
it.
Amended application.
Perfectly happy.
So then
So I noted two locations in the decision
That's what I
that
was about
refer
to-
to.
Page 11,
Page 11, in the, what I'm referring to is the preamble.
first
where it begins,
paragraph.
Now therefore,
uh,
and then condition 16 on page 15.
and what you would like, what would be appropriate to say is, 43 residential units within 5 2.5-story and 2 3-story
Correct.
buildings.
It's only A and E that are at the
Yeah.
3-story level.
Uh,
I think it's worth noting the building letters as well, designated on their plans.
Oh, the other,
Said it was A and E being the
Oh,
2,
good point.
3 stories, so then
Yeah, so,
that leaves the others being the 5, 2.5 stories.
so the numbers refer.
oh, we could specify which
B,
buildings.
C, D, F, and G.
Yeah,
Right. I think there's no harm doing that.
I agree.
So add specification of buildings.
And then that would leave condition 16.
Would be, I think there you just, all you need to do is strike 2.5 stories
And just
so it
put
reads, building height is limited to a maximum of
35
35
feet.
feet.
That cleans it up.
Agreed.
Much as I wish they were all 2.5.
Okay, so does that take care of the 2.5 versus 35 feet?
Yeah.
So to Attorney Clower's third point, the no-touch limit of work area that he described?
So there's 2 areas, if you look at the plan here, you can see where we're not gonna have more than 50-foot limit of work. The northeast corner over here, and also in the area of the septic system over here. Though those areas are not 50 feet wide. The setbacks to the buildings are all 70 feet. And this limit here is more than 50 feet, as well as here. But there are a few areas where that limit is not 50 feet. So I think for it to be called a no-touch for 50 feet is problematic. But I think we could refer to anything beyond the limit of work shown in the plans as being no-touch.
And that, where's the limit of work line?
It's this line that runs along the northern edge up here.
Right.
So where's the closest distance?
It's either at this northeast corner right here or by the septic fields over here. Both are pretty close. I think Bob's suggested language, I think got to that point pretty well, in which he said, the limit of work line shown on the site plan hyphen site layout plan shall be demarked by fencing throughout construction. The area beyond that line shall be no touch, where all vegetation shall remain.
Does anyone want to weigh in about that?
That sounds good. And there's only one reference plan, not a plan number.
I think we're on that plan, aren't we?
I didn't
We're
see
actually on that plan. I think this plan probably shows it the best. The other plans don't have, because this,
And the title of the plan is?
What sheet?
it's C-101
So let's just put C-101.
That's fine.
That's good.
Parentheses.
of the site plans.
So on the northeast corner, just a question, so that's a dumpster location, right?
Driveway and dumpster, I believe.
So what's the biggest need for the work zone to be expanded on that end, just to get equipment back and forth?
It's not a matter of expanding the work. I think I think it has to do with the topography there and likely to, if I had to surmise, it's probably to access behind the building for construction purposes.
Okay.
You just come right up the roadway there. But I know that it ties into the topography and grading and.
So is everyone okay with that
That's fine.
notation?
Concur.
And that leaves us, the few items Attorney Clower mentioned about the, I don't know, minor corrections, for lack of a better term, and administrative approval.
So I understand what Mr. Clower is saying. The only thing that concerns me here is the project is so large. And
Where's
how-
that condition again? Just wanna,
It's
Attorney Clower,
condition
could
one,
you-
condition one on page 11, I believe.
think it's is it 2 on 13?
So it goes, condition 1 goes on to page 12, and it says, so for instance, it says 1A, building A, the building should be 34 feet, 11 and 15/16 inches, and may have some parking in front of the building. Building E, it says 35 feet. Building D says 30 feet, 2 1/8 inch. Building C says 30 feet, 2 1/8 inch. Building E says 24 feet, 5 3/4 inches. F, 6 1/4, and then G, 29, 6 1/4.
So you're saying
I'm just saying specifying it as such in the.
plus
in
or
the-
minus 6
in-
inches?
So, excuse me,
We
but
certainly wouldn't want you to
tho-
go over 35.
No.
those height dimensions are from the plans.
Oh.
They're not
I-
a randomly selected number.
No, I understand that, and I
And-
wasn't indicating that you had picked them out of a hat by any stretch of the imagination.
But I guess the other is, I would advocate to you that, given that, for example, Building A is proposed to be 1/16 of an inch below your maximum height, is such a minute amount for a factor of an error that, I think you should hold firm on that, and I think, because it, you know, a slight deviation is gonna potentially put a structure over 35 feet.
Over the height limit.
Well, we did note in our correspondence that any deviation that went beyond a limitation would be obviously material. And I think we're also talking right now about what if it goes over, but there is a possibility that it's also under by an inch, a quarter of an inch, or an eighth of an inch.
That's fine.
Well, but that's not what the decision says right now. The decision says it shall be this height. and
Well,
if
then
it's
that's
not-
easy to fix, shall be no more than.
35 feet? I know that,
30 for 11, 5, 16.
rather than, just say 35 feet, we're talking about a 16th of an inch.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, but that's not what their plans say, though.
yeah,
Oh,
if this is what the plan says,
Okay.
then we just say the building shall be no more than 34 feet, 11 and 15/16 inches in height. That, what I have the problem with, it doesn't say in height.
No,
So, so it's like,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I'd like to leave that in there.
Yeah, we'll leave it in there.
so there's a bunch of little places where these dimensions are missing some wording that makes it unclear what they refer to.
We all know it means the height. but somebody
You know,
else may not.
We do, maybe.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't clear necessarily, but again, in 3 or 4 or 5 years, or some different board looking at this decision, isn't gonna know what the heck it
Yeah.
meant.
So we need to go have it.
So I just think there's language,
So I just want to clarify.
corrections on language. For example, in D, building C shall be 55 feet from the south. South what?
South lot line.
Property line, that's missing.
Okay.
There's quite a few of these. So I think it needs, it's, you know, my personal feeling, it's not quite ready for prime time.
Could we approve it, subject to Scrivener errors?
Why? Why not just go back through carefully? I'm starting to make these notes and just make sure that we get a clean copy to vote.
If I can go back to the building height issue for one moment. I wasn't asking that the building heights be disregarded by any stretch of the imagination. What we were suggesting was that rather than condition 2 saying shall be subject to a full review of the board if it's a quarter of an inch off. So for instance, take one of the buildings that's 29 feet and change. If that ends up being an eighth of an inch taller, that would end up requiring a full review of the board. So what we had suggested was that the board or the zoning administrator have the ability to deem a minor change of that nature immaterial. And we had stated that any deviation that would violate a dimensional requirement is certainly going to be material. But all that would require is that condition 2 essentially go from shall to may. And that would be at the board and the administrator's discretion. So I certainly understand what you're saying, Mr. Foreman, and I think that's a good step in the right direction. But I think that there should be, we're not asking for it to be disregarded or for us to come and say, oh, sorry, it's 2 inches too tall. we're saying that we will need to come to the ZBA, that much is very clear, but there may be a situation where if it is an eighth of an inch or a 16th of an inch, that the board or the administrator could say, given this circumstance, we are okay with where this is.
I could agree with the May, because we still have the discretion.
Well, I don't like May because that says,
It's
you
too
don't
easy.
have to submit it,
It has to go to Noreen and us.
so shall be submitted to the zoning administrator,
Or shall be submitted.
you know?
That shall be submitted to the zoning administrator, be fine, and then, you know, I just think there needs to be a provision where the administrator and/or the board can determine
May.
that it may require a full review
For determination,
or modification.
how about shall be submitted to the zoning administrator for determination,
As to whether or not the change is material.
of whether it is material, or, and requires board
Modification.
review. How about that?
Sounds good.
I just think there needs to be, you know, we're not asking to be able to build whatever they want. It's just that I think there needs to be a little bit of opportunity not to end up
I
having
think we
to.
concur
It
with
seems
what you're
most
saying.
likely from what you're saying that these deviations would be discovered after they were,
Well, you'd be,
after construction.
that's just it, you'd be doing a height
So
certification.
you don't want to say prior to implementation of said change.
So, looking,
That is the way is, you know, we need a height certification, and then we put another general condition, any
Well, I mean,
deviation.
Well, I think that's the problem, you're trying to
This is-
close in the,
any deviation, no matter how minor, from plans submitted and approved by this board shall be submitted to the zoning administrator for determination of whether.
I really think we're looking at the second, I think we should be looking at the second sentence there, which say, changes made prior to an approval shall be submitted to the zoning administrator for determination as to whether or not it is a material change and therefore subject to a full hearing
Prior to
schedule.
an approval, what do you mean an approval?
Changes made prior to an approval, so if a change was determined after the fact, exactly like what we're discussing here with a height issue. So it says, changes made prior to an
Well,
approval,
that would be
so.
subsequent to an approval.
Mm,
I think my particular concern here is that you don't want to set up a situation where all changes are brought to you after the fact. I think
Right.
to the extent that they can be planned for, the applicant should seek your
Oh, I
permission
agree.
in
This
advance.
is an
I
important
agree.
condition, it's just needs to, we need to figure out how to word it so that it does what we want. I think Kevin has a valid point,
Yep.
that we don't wanna see every little deviation from the plan on a giant project like this where they're gonna, you know, there's gonna be small,
For window changes
a
location.
window placement, you know, moves by 6 inches or something. We don't need to see that. But maybe you need to notify the zoning administrator.
Well,
so that-
I agree, I agree 100%. I think
We
it's,
just need some wording that's gonna express that, and
Yeah.
this is.
because
not-
right now it says that
this is
anything
not-
done,
You are correct, this is not the proper wording.
I'll stop
But it
talking
might be
now.
hard to do on the fly here.
so we can work on wording in the next.
I think
yeah.
that condition needs work, I guess that's the conclusion.
I agree. What was next?
That was the extent of my, big concerns.
So I have a question on 1C and D,
What page?
which goes to, well, it starts on 11, but you can actually go to C at the bottom of page 12, and then D on 13. So those are the two buildings that aren't allowing parking in front. It does state that here. No parking is allowed in front of this building, garage parking only allowed. The plan that's been submitted has striping in front of those two locations, so I would just like to get the striping removed in front of those two buildings, because once you stripe, it suggests parking.
Maybe it should be landscaped.
Well, it's the driveway, so you really can't landscape it, but,
Oh.
so if you look on the, it's hard to see, but if you look on the
Yeah, no, I
four,
remember this issue.
So on those 4 driveways on C and D at the bottom, each one of those driveways is separated in the middle by a striped line. So
Okay.
I'd like to get the lines removed.
That could be a note on the plan, right?
They could actually just remove it off the plan. If they don't want to put it in here, they can just remove it.
Do you, I'm not opposed to this, I'm just trying to figure out if we need to submit a whole new set.
That's what I was trying to get at, whether,
I think you can just list it as part of the condition for each of those
So we could just put a
buildings.
condition on
striping.
each one of those that no striping appear in the driveways in front of both those
Go
buildings.
back to, go back a second.
So that's for C and D. Those are the 2 buildings that,
So point to exactly,
He's you can see there's a faint white line right about here.
So each one of those 4 driveways is divided in the middle by a painted white line.
There, right
And
there.
those are the 2 buildings that you can't park in
in the,
front of.
so in the middle of the driveways.
Each
there
one.
is- there is some kind of a little, okay.
there's a
Gotcha.
walkway or something, or
There is something in between the driveways. What is that?
That's, well, that separates the 2 units, so that would be.
But is that a landscaped peninsula of some kind?
It's like an abutment or something.
So I just wonder if those lines mark, so there's, yeah, all right. And those are just 2-car garages, is that the?
Well, it's,
It's actually, it's a 1 car, but a 2.
that, yeah, that, well, we take away the stripe. and
Should you
they're
take the
gonna park-
striping, it just
they're gonna
won't
park
suggest
there
parking.
anyways.
I'm just trying to avoid having to submit another 35 plans and inundating the,
Please.
zoning board.
Well, Noreen had a good suggestion.
So we'll just condition those 2 items to not have striping in
Sure.
the driveways.
It's buildings, C and D.
Anything else, Bob?
No.
And Attorney Clower, you've covered your major points.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll be told tomorrow that I missed some, but I think we've got them all.
So we'd need to circulate another copy?
I think so.
Yeah, I think you've got a number of other scrivener errors you're gonna
Yeah.
submit.
Yeah, there's some noun, verb,
You're gonna give her your hand scratching and just,
I'll send her some.
okay.
Premises. If there's more than one, they are required. That would be 5.
Okay. I think I said last meeting we were at around 90%. I'd say we're more around 99% now.
Yeah, it's much closer.
It's a big decision. We appreciate all the time and work that this board's put into it. And,
I've got some minor procedural things that, you know, on page 13, where shall notify condition, or item 4H, no, I don't know what the hell this is, maybe condition 4, about discuss coordination of traffic during construction. I guess this is more up to Noreen. Why do we have to be notified? Or should we be notified? Just should be.
So we're requesting the name and phone number of the project
So
contact
you want it.
individual
You want it?
for our records,
Okay,
correct?
fine,
Yeah,
okay.
so if we get any calls with concerns or
Okay.
complaints, we can
All
have that available.
The other thing is on 6, down below. Do we want that, the rental agreements submitted annually to us, or just the affordable housing designee? I'm just thinking of, we get it, we're gonna review it, we're gonna file it.
So there's annual reporting requirements.
So you
that-
want it?
That they have to provide.
we have
So
to
I
submit
mean-
those anyways to the.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right.
So just another copy.
And the other one on bottom of 6 is with an affordable housing specialist that meets with the ZBA approval. Do we approve that, or does someone else approve?
Now, where are you?
You mean number, item 6?
Item 6 on the bottom,
Page
page
13.
13. Ongoing proof of current monitoring services agreement with an affordable housing specialist that meets with meets with ZBA approval. I mean, I guess we could do it, but I would think someone else in town certifies affordable housing specialists. If you want it, you have it.
Well, it's the certification that they're submitting.
No, ongoing proof monitoring with an affordable housing specialist. The specialist that meets
Oh, on
with,
you're on what, on 14?
Yeah, it's 6E.
I think they can just provide
Yeah.
whoever
Okay.
that person is. I think the intent here is just that it be done in a proper fashion as
Okay.
opposed to just assigning someone. Yeah. So I think we can just put a period after housing specialist.
yeah, that's all I was.
Yep.
yeah.
So who is there a designated monitoring agent? Or not?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet.
Yeah, so
Because often, there is.
Well, with the 40B project,
There is.
Right.
we'd be
Right.
coming in with one. We haven't engaged someone as the housing specialist
Because
yet.
we usually, we often go with the Falmouth Housing Trust.
Usually do.
We're gonna offer it to Falmouth Housing Trust. They have the ability to say yes or no.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure we want that necessarily to be a condition, but that's the intent, is to offer it to them.
So there is, and I guess that could, over time, that could change, yes?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of organizations that have gotten out of the monitoring business. So,
And this would just say they have to submit who it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
we'll have to submit proof of it.
So is there a certification, how do they become qualified to become monitoring agents?
I don't know.
Good.
I'm sure it's a state designation, as
Well,
Mr.
right,
Moore
I just
said.
wonder if there isn't some language that says state certified or certified
Oh, I
or,
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
affordable housing.
I don't know the answer to that.
That might be worth looking into. Because this is kind of vague. I mean, an affordable housing specialist. Oh, I'm an affordable housing specialist.
I'm being
Well, that's why I
presumptive,
didn't want
but
us
I
to
would
approve
hope
it.
There's some sort of state
Yeah, I would
certification.
too.
Well, the more specific, the better.
State
I just
approved.
think there ought to be some criteria.
I think we
that-
could probably look at the language that's typically used for a 40B decision.
Right,
Um,
right. What is criteria?
Thank you for the clarification.
Anything else?
I have one more.
Sure.
On the last page, I think it's condition landscaping shall be installed as presented where? Should we say what plan it's gonna be?
I mean, there's a number of
Wanna
landscaping
reference the
plans.
landscape plan on that?
The most recent.
Well,
There's proposed plant, there's landscaping materials, and then there's two separate proposed planting plans that cover different areas of the site. So,
Will we
say
refer to them in
Well,
L101,
as presented on, let's,
approved plan.
sheets.
I mean, there's
whatever.
three sheets. It's L101, L102, and L103.
Okay.
102 and L103, 3 sheets,
And then if that
To the
last,
maybe.
that last.
Not yet.
The last
See how the
sentence,
Bruins doing.
I think the last sentence should be a registered landscape architect, not a landscape architect. Or
Is
professional.
there such a thing?
I'm
I
not,
think so.
I'm not sure.
I think there is.
They do have registered.
There are.
Well, it does say or landscape design professional, so.
We could say professional landscape architect.
But is a landscape design professional the same as a landscape architect? Again,
Don't know.
I don't know what the
You put
distinction.
it in.
I didn't.
Did we put it in?
It would be,
I'm
ni-
putting registered with a question mark. Something we can work on, right?
Legal.
We have community input.
No, we have a we have a landscape architect in the house.
Do we?
Richard Johnson, registered landscape architect. It is a state certified registration.
Okay.
There is no certification for a landscape designer or a landscape professional that I'm aware of. It's a registered landscape architect.
Okay.
so then let's ask for a
So let's
registered
just
landscape
cross
Well,
out
the
architect.
question is, have they done that? Is that,
You've taken meticulous notes like for countless nights, and you finally get to weigh in on an issue. Thank you.
All right, so do you want to just leave registered
But a registered landscape architect shall
and then
certify.
take out the design
Yes.
professional?
There's no such thing?
do we?
Well, there
I
is.
mean,
It's not a
that's
certification.
fairly restrictive.
All right,
It
so
is fairly restrictive. I'd prefer it not be the case,
All right,
but I'm
here's
not
what-
gonna die on that hill.
just my 2 cents. apparently you do not have someone assigned by, would be typically the planning board, who would do site visits and ensure that plant material is installed per plans. So absent having someone to do that, if you just have somebody certify that the plants are according to plan, you're covered.
So if they're not registered and they just certify, is there any protection on that?
Apparently not.
So maybe we should have it as registered.
Well, he just said there's no landscape design professional. That designation doesn't exist.
Well, he said there's no certification for it. I think people present themselves as.
If we say a registered landscape architect or landscape design professional,
Okay.
then you can bet
It's gonna be anyone.
it's gonna be anyone. So it's really up to the board. I don't have a strong.
I like the idea of just a
But if you
registered,
wanna make it more restrictive, and hold their feet to the fire, then maybe you wanna say registered landscape architect.
it's a large project, I just think it's smart to have a registered landscape architect. Especially when you're dealing with the certification.
We'll go with that.
And we know where there is one, right?
We know a few. Richard, fantastic.
Okay. Any other points to be?
Not for me,
made?
thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay, so, we're gonna see it again?
One last time, hopefully.
Yeah.
So do we have to request the,
Should we just see at the next meeting?
Might have to request an extension, Attorney Clower. I'm sure you'll be amenable to executing that.
Sure.
Noreen, is the next meeting too quick, or do you think we can?
That would be fine for me. I think the only issue for you folks is that's gonna be a very busy night. You do
Well-
have executive session that night as well.
If we get this in the
But
form that it's
it's just, yeah,
in, we should take 5 seconds to vote it.
right.
Right.
Board members.
Board
double
does
check it
reserve the
in
right to take
advance.
anything out of order.
so what date is that?
Would you want,
13th?
June 13th.
would you want to, is it too much, highlight any of the administrative changes?
I can do that.
It might just help.
Sure.
And we should all be good about sending her back feedback.
Should we?
Yes, we should.
We should, Dr. Foreman.
Which some of us have not been.
Some of us have been busy.
Anyone like to make that motion then?
I make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion was made by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It'll be
Attorney
available for
Clower,
the
I
next
have
meeting.
an extension for you to execute.
Thank you very much. And I know the hearing's over, and I'm not talking what we're told at the moment, but I want to take a moment to note something. Last week, I think motions ran fairly high for certainly myself and other people in the audience that were here with us. And I hope this board knows how much I do appreciate and respect the work you guys do. And if I have offended anyone in making a comment that was out of line, I apologize. But I do respect this board greatly. I'm in front of you, I think, as much as anyone is. And I wouldn't want you to think otherwise. So,
Thank you, Attorney Clower.
We might forgive you.
Billable hours in any case. Setting up the appeals.
Thank you.
thank you guys very much.
Thank you. All right, so board updates. Does anyone have anything?
No, but there is I think Noreen mentioned, there's that substance abuse meeting on, is it June 11th?
Yes,
Next
6
Tuesday?
o'clock at the Falmouth High School. And they're looking to have a community forum regarding sober houses and treatment facilities.
Any of those ZBA issues, per
Well, the
se?
Not
short
s-
answer is you
not
never
s-
know.
Not, right. Not-
Yes and
not-
no?
Not
Okay.
traditionally specifically, but you are all invited at any rate.
Okay, I just,
And if a majority of
will
us do have an interest, we would need to post
me
that
know
in terms
very
of
soon,
open meeting
yes.
law, so I'll just ask,
Soon.
does anyone have an interest in actually going? I, for one,
I-
will be tuning in on TV.
I will not be going.
Okay,
I will be going.
you will be going. So two,
I'll try and make it.
I may tune in on TV.
maybe three of us?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at least that's out there, because of course we would have to post that
So
to
maybe just for
comply with the
safety's
open
sake.
meeting law.
You want to post it just to be careful?
Just to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We always like to be careful with that. Anything else for board updates?
Do we have a date yet for the workshop?
We don't. We've been
To be
thinking about
determined.
it, now that we have a full board. I think I've mentioned before, we get together on a Saturday morning in Town Hall, and we have a few hours to
Yep.
go over things.
New members bring breakfast?
Bring your own breakfast.
I mean, I have no dates that are bad for me right now.
Okay. We get it done sooner rather than later.
So maybe go over possible dates that people can chime in on.
Do you want me to bring you some date options for our next meeting?
Sure, that'd be
Whereas
good. How about
I have-
get to Noreen about possible
Good.
availability on Saturday mornings, maybe in July?
Well, we need to look and see when the forecast is bad weather.
That's right.
Good luck.
And we also want to suggest agenda items.
Yes, do that as well.
I've at least sent one to Noreen.
Very good. All right, board discussion, zoning recodification committee, is there an update?
No new news.
Okay, any future agenda items? None? All right, next meeting is June 13th, here at Town Hall, 6:30, meeting adjourned.
Should we send